Hey, everybody. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. I appreciate it as we continue our week on talking about writing. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. And today we're going to talk about the next part of the writing process, which is rewriting, the fun part. Well, I don't know. This part kind of takes the longest time for most people. Just going back through a project and trying to make things work. Very riveting stuff, honestly. But we're going to get into it today. Just a quick note, though. Um, Again, I've been doing this for a little while. I'm not um, I'm not what you would call a professional writer. I do not write for large projects like that. I write for myself, and it's just based off of I base everything off of how I've gone about doing my thing, how I've gone about learning. So if there's something that you disagree with, I completely understand. Um, but I really kind of just got up here to do all of this because well, for one, have a passion for writing, but two, so that I can gauge the room and see, like what everybody else is doing, what they're thinking about, what their process is, and if they feel like, maybe what I'm saying is cool, or if there's some things that they would do different. Like, I like to be social, and I'm interested in getting good feedback. So if you're listening to my podcast at any point and you feel like sharing what you think about what I'm saying, please do. I really appreciate that, and I definitely would like the feedback. So anyway, enough of that. We're going to get into actually going through the process of completing a finished final draft. Well, this is like part one of that. But anyway, let's get into it. So, rewriting in itself is the process of going back after you've thrown out everything in your head for your first draft through your speed drafting. Okay, sorry, I had to bring that in there. And you're looking to now do the process that we were talking about before, where most people kind of get stuck on trying to be perfect in their first draft. Now's the time through your second draft to try to really hone it in. So all of the grammatical errors and stuff are obvious. You don't want to have that in there, but you're looking to do more than that, and that is focus on your story structuring, your story beats, your character interactions, things like that. And you really want to make sure that while you're doing it, you have a mind that your story is telling the audience what you want to tell them. You don't want to get lost in your editing process and then find out that your entire project changed and the message that you're trying to say is changed because, well, then it's not what you sought out to really put out. It's just something completely different. But anyway, like I said, we'll get into that. And we're going to really talk about how when you're when you're writing your project, make sure that your pacing is on point so that you're hitting your beats and you're getting out of those scenes as quick and as fluent as possible and just moving the story along. All right, let's do it. To start, let's talk about how to make sure to print your first draft. And you want to do that because you want to have it in your hand to go through and mark and do all these other things to it, and also because there's something empowering about holding it. I mean, you know that it's there. You can go through with a red pen and mark through things and change things up, and that allows a person to really know that they're moving forward in their process. I feel it's helped me because a lot of the times when I was doing some of the competitions for screenwriting, I wouldn't do that. I would just kind of speed through speed draft my way through the competition. But I noticed that, well, obviously I wasn't winning anything because I wasn't going back and rewriting. I was just getting, waiting until the end of the competition time and just kind of hurrying through some type of um, submission. Now, that's a fault of mine, or at least that's a fault that I came to learn about myself with the rewriting process because I never done it until until recently. But I've seen the importance of doing it. When I did The Lake, which you should definitely go back and listen to if you haven't already, it's up here posted as a short story. Um, I ended up writing it, and I did not write it right the first time. I ended up changing a lot after going back and looking through it. There were a lot of things that I was going to add in there, a lot of other interactions that I was going to end up putting in there. But then when I went back and put it back on my table, I noticed that none of it was really working. It wasn't saying anything. It was just, I think like part of my head was in like, oh, this needs to be like an action. Oh, this needs to be like a some type of mysterious cosmic horror thing. And I put too much emphasis on things that didn't matter in my speed writing. And yeah, if I had just posted that, it would not have been as good as people were saying that it is now. Like it would have just been some type of fantasy. I don't know what, some type of power fantasy, blah, blah, blah. And that's why going back, rewriting is important. But also, what I did was I did print out a physical copy of that project. And when I did that and I held it in my hand, I saw that this was my thing. Like I could go back, I could cut stuff out, I could, mark my way through it, and it was empowering. So remember to do that. Also, focus putting focus on your beats, on your story beats, and character development is critical at this stage because you don't want to go through your project and notice that, or you don't want to post your project without noticing that your characters are not working right, or that you might have started something in this one part of your story, but then it just kind of fell flat towards the end of maybe that, like that scene or that chapter or whatever. And that's kind of an issue when it comes down to posting your work, because when people listen or read your stuff, they're going to be like, well, okay, this started here, okay, but then like where did this character go? What happened to this person? Where are they now? You're, and I'm not saying that that's the case for every writer, but if you follow the process, you'll see that you'll end up in a spot where you're you're not grasping at straws. You're not trying to lead people on. You're telling a cohesive narrative, and that's ultimately what people want. They want to have a story told to them that's hitting a mark and getting them interested, not something that's just leading them astray. And so when we do that, we need to then wrap up the rewriting process with pacing. We need to figure out and really read through our own project multiple times, probably. I'm pretty sure that you would be going through it as much as possible at this stage, but you need to make sure that these beats that you're writing into your story are actually moving the story along, and your story is moving along at a pace where you're able to like really get it. You're able to read your project and it doesn't feel like a bunch of clutter. It doesn't feel like it's too much or too little. It feels like your narrative is just hitting it. Boom, boom, boom. And you're really going on a journey through your work. Now, a good way to do that is to let someone else read your work, which we'll talk about that in the next one. But you really want to make sure that whatever you're putting into your story and whatever you're putting into your work, that it's giving you back what you're trying to really say in your story. I follow philosophy a lot, and so when I put a lot of different thoughts into my work, I want to make sure that I'm using those themes that really drive the point home. Like I don't want to just say, oh, this is about the philosophy of Nietzsche or someone else obscure or whatever. In my story, I don't want to just write that out. I want to be able to have you listen to these character interactions, these dramatic crescendos into my story, and actually puzzle that out yourself. And the only way that I can do that is if I focus on the pacing of the project itself, making sure that I'm not just jumping from one thing to the next and you get whiplashed thinking that this person is trying to say something when they're actually not trying to say that. So, in conclusion, when we go into rewriting, we have to have a specific mindset so that we are focused on building up the reinforced walls. We're trying to make our story airtight and eliminate as many plot holes and inconsistencies as possible, because again, the main goal is to tell the audience how we feel, or tell them what we're trying to say, or whatever. We're trying to make the story as easy for them as it was easy for us. And what I mean by that is it's easy to come up with these stories in our heads. We have all of these grand ideas. This would make like such a great movie. These characters would work well together. You're doing your mood boards and stuff, and you're putting these actors and actresses in your head canon. Maybe your fantasy work is, it's all trying to tell a story, and you're getting it. And we're trying to make that feeling and condense it down into something that someone else will get, and they'll enjoy it as much as you do. And so, that's the mindset, and really just being empowered when you're going through the process is important. Again, like with that first draft and holding it in your hands, that's just really important, because you work really hard to get your ideas out into your out of your head and onto a physical platform, and there you go, you have it, you're holding it, you're editing it, and it's something that I feel carries me along when I'm doing my projects. Just being able to have the thing in hand and working on it from there. So and just remembering that the way that you pace your story is making sure that things aren't so, whiplashy, neck breaking. Events aren't just happening because you want them to happen, but rather they're happening, and the situations are being earned, really, more than they're just being thrown at you. With your characters are earning those scenes. They're earning those emotions. They're not just in it because you said, oh, and let there be crying. No. Telling good backstory, getting in these characters' heads, and really showing off those little nuances, or at least writing them. That's how you go about it with pacing, and just making sure that through your rewriting and through all of your other efforts in the writing process, that it's ultimately your project, and you're getting out of it, or rather putting into it, what you want the audience to get out of it. So with that, thank you so much for listening to the podcast, and I'll see you guys on the next one. So later.